Hello and welcome to my latest career video. Now on this career video we are featuring one of the good lightweight contenders from the era of Benny, Leonard, etc. Okay, this fighter is the Akron Flash, Johnny Griffiths, who was a very tough contender. So we will go through Johnny Griffiths' career, starting with his surprising resume. So Johnny Griffiths, okay, starts out with a 9-fight series with the boxing marvel Jack Britton. He only scored 1 win, suffering 6 losses and 2 draws. He also fought the great Scotch Wop Johnny Dundee to a draw in a singular fight, before then holding also 2 wins over the Welsh wizard Freddie Welsh. So that's 2 great wins there. He then fought former lightweight champion and Hall of Famer Willie Ritchie in a singular fight, suffering a defeat, before also having 2 wins over former champion Matt Wells. So like with Jack Britton, okay, Johnny Griffiths had a long fight series also with Britain's great rival Ted Kid Lewis. Okay, Johnny Griffiths scored 1 win with 4 losses and 2 draws from those 7 fights. He then fought former welterweight champion Jimmy Jones in a singular fight, okay, fighting to a draw. Griffiths also fought the toy bulldog Mickey Walker on 3 occasions, suffering 3 defeats from those 3 fights. He then goes on a run here of singular defeats. Okay, the first is to Hall of Famer and former champion Jimmy Slattery. He then loses 2 contenders, Sailor Friedman and Moritz Schleifer, both in singular fights, before also losing, okay, to tough contender Frankie Shoel. Next up is former super bantamweight champion Jack Kid Wolf. Okay, Johnny Griffiths fought him on 1 occasion, suffering a defeat. He then also fought Monty Attell, okay, in a singular fight, fighting to a draw, and closes out slide 1 with a singular win over Jack White. So there's a lot of fights on there for Johnny Griffiths, a lot of Hall of Famers and some fantastic champions, and a few top 10 all-time fighters in my rankings. So that is slide 1. When we go on to slide 2 for Johnny Griffiths, okay, he fights Eddie O'Keefe in a singular fight, scoring a win, and then he repeats a singular win in 1 fight to Philadelphia Pal Moore. Next up is tough UK contender Charlie White. Johnny Griffiths fights him on 2 occasions, fighting 2 draws. He then fights a trilogy, okay, with Joe Mandot, okay, a very excellent fighter from his time. Griffiths doesn't lose any of those 3, scoring 2 wins and fighting to 1 draw. Next up is Herb Kid McCoy. Herb Kid McCoy fights Johnny Griffiths on 1 occasion and they fight to a draw. And then Griffiths scores singular wins, the first over the excellent Joe Shagru, and he also scores a singular win over Joe Acevedo. Next up is Phil Brock, whom Johnny Griffiths defeats on 2 occasions. Then he also, in singular fights, defeats the capable Milburn Sailor. He then also, with a great display, defeats experienced Leech Cross. Then former middleweight contender Brian Downey, okay, is fought by Johnny Griffiths in his career 4 times. Griffiths scores 2 wins with 2 losses and no draws. He then also fights a trilogy with the sheriff from Lockport, Jimmy Duffy, not suffering any defeats in the trilogy, scoring 1 win and fighting 2 draws. So the final 3 names on slide 2 for Johnny Griffiths. The first is a win over Mexican Joe Rivers. The next name is Joe Welling, whom Johnny Griffiths fights on 2 occasions, winning both times, and then he has a 7-fight series with fellow tough contender Johnny Tillman, okay, scoring 3 wins with 4 losses and no draws. So as you can see over the first 2 slides, Johnny Griffiths certainly was not one of those contenders who was afraid to mix it in tough company. When we go on to slide 3, okay, he fights Jack Perry in a trilogy, scores no wins in this trilogy. He's had a whole number of trilogies where he hasn't suffered defeats. In this one he does, okay, suffering 2 losses and 1 draw from those 3 fights. Griffiths twice held a win over KO Willie Lachlan, before also holding a win over Francis Charles. Next up is Marcel Thomas, okay, whom Griffiths defeats on 1 occasion. He also defeats the capable Albert Badoud before the final fight on here, what is against Billy Shade. That is a draw. So that is 73 fights highlighted there, okay. Johnny Griffiths has won 31 of them, lost 27 and drew 15. So when we go on to his stat slides, Johnny Griffiths scored 17 knockouts. He scored 6 in 3 rounds or less and 1 in the first round. Now Griffiths never scored a KO or stoppage over a champion, Hall of Famer or pound for pounder. Also he scored no KOs over rated fighters, albeit the ratings came in, tail end of his career, that his rated opponents, like many from this time, Jack Britton amongst others, you know, his main fights against rated opponents are towards the end of his career. But Johnny Griffiths fought a large total of 1,449 career rounds. He did fight 28 title fight rounds. He also fights for a Contender large totals of 331 rounds against champions. He fought 278 rounds against Hall of Famers, and he fought 290 rounds against pound for pounders. To put it another way, that 290 rounds against pound for pounders, for example, that is equivalent of more than 20 12-round fights against pound for pounders. So in terms of fights against rated opponents, Johnny Griffiths, like I said, with the ratings coming in when they did, his career being fought before that, he only fought 81 rounds against top 10 fighters, 37 rounds against top 3 fighters, and 31 rounds against ring champions, although those numbers would be staggeringly higher had ratings been around his whole career. So when we go on to the slide against champions, we see Johnny Griffiths has 29 fights against champions, including 6 wins, 16 losses and 7 draws. Of course, a lot of those defeats there came in those losing fight runs to Jack Britton and Ted Kid Lewis. They account for a lot of those defeats there. So Johnny Griffiths defeated 4 individual champions. They were Jack Britton, Freddie Welsh, Matt Wells and Ted Kid Lewis, and as shown on the knockout stats, he scored no knockouts over champions individually. So when we go on to the Hall of Fame slide for Johnny Griffiths, he had 24 fights against Hall of Famers, scoring 4 wins with 15 losses and 5 draws. Again, many of those defeats to Britton and Ted Kid Lewis. He defeated 3 individual Hall of Famers, them being Jack Britton, Freddie Welsh and Ted Kid Lewis. So in a way, he beat one of the best lightweights of the era prior to the rise of Benny Leonard. He also beat the 2 best welterweights of that era. Lost to them as well. He didn't lose to Freddie Welsh, he beat him twice, but you know, he also held wins over the 2 greatest welterweights of that era, so no small plum there. So Johnny Griffiths scored no knockouts over Hall of Famers individually, and when we go to the pound for pound slide, we see he had 25 fights also against pound for pounders, scoring a record of 4 wins, 15 losses and 6 draws, and the 3 pound for pounders he beat were the Hall of Famers he beat on last slide, Jack Britton, Freddie Welsh and Ted Kid Lewis. Johnny Griffiths scored no knockouts over pound for pound fighters. So 3 slides to go, beginning with his rated opponents. Johnny Griffiths, as I pointed out, the bulk of his career before the rating era had come to pass. So he only has 10 fights against top 10 fighters, obviously limited numbers due to the lack of ratings prior to that. But he had 8 losses and 2 draws against those rated opponents. He also had 4 fights against top 3 rated fighters, all of them defeats, and he lost 3 from 3 against ring champions. So Johnny Griffiths, scored no wins over rated fighters individually and also no knockouts over rated fighters individually. But to give you an idea, had ratings been around, you know, fighters like Joe Mandort and Joe Shagru, Milburn Saylor, Jack Britton, Ted Kid Lewis, Matt Wells, all of those guys would have been rated. Many would have been top 3, many would have been ring champions. So it is a shame we don't have those fully accurate numbers, but I cannot transplant my personal thoughts into it. You know, with the fighters who were the world champions, they're going to be ring champions in today's rating system, obviously. But, you know, sadly we don't have them. So, on to world title fight stats now. Johnny Griffiths, unlike many, did have world title fights. He had 2 of them. He didn't win either of them. He scored no wins, 1 loss, 1 draw from those 2 title fights. Thus, he made no title defences and scored 0 title fight KOs. And thus, he scored no wins against top 10, top 3 fighters or ring champions, nor wins against champions, Hall of Famers or pound for pounders. So the Akron Flash, when we go on to his final slide, world titles held. He was not awarded any titles and obviously had no title wins, so he captured no world titles, no lineal titles and no undisputed titles. But there's another name, one of the tough contenders of his time, the Akron Flash, a very, very good fighter indeed. Ultimately, you know, many people scroll by on fighters' resumes, like Freddie Welsh's resume. They'll see Johnny Griffiths and have no clue who he is, which is why these videos here just shed a bit of a light, and will shed more light on many of the contenders, you know, of the great fighters and what they did, who they beat. So there's Johnny Griffiths. More videos coming over coming days, weeks, months and years. I'm the Boxing Librarian. I'm out for now.